because I'm a visual artist and creative director, and I run a little bit called Solar.
Okay. All right. So, let's start in the same order that we introduced ourselves. Why are you doing this? So,
As in this talk or this life?
well, really just the
No, okay,
job.
all right, wait,
Just
hold
the
on.
job.
Okay. Yeah, I guess growing up, art was well, I used to draw a lot. I guess I was like that kid that kids would ask to draw things.
Mm.
And then yeah, art was like my favorite subject in high school. I think there's a point where it's gonna get really sad. I was really depressed and like a movie saved my life kind of thing.
Oh, what movie was that?
And then have you seen this Will Ferrell movie called Stranger Than Fiction?
I haven't actually.
Yeah. Well, it's this movie about this guy who like he starts to hear this narrator narrating his life, and then like yeah, he goes on like a whole thing, and then he like lives life and whatever.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I think I remember watching that like 3 a.m. in the morning, and then I was probably in fourth or fifth form, and I was like, I think I want to make movies, and then yeah, it kind of just led me to be like, okay, I'm gonna do this art thing. I'm gonna do this art media thing, and yeah,
That's pretty cool.
one thing
I'll
went
put
on
that
with it.
movie on my bucket list of things that I should
Yeah,
watch. That's interesting.
yeah, man.
Okay. So, Glenn, why are you doing what you're doing currently?
Um, well, you're starting off the gate with like heavy questions, so
Yeah. Well,
um,
let's split it up. Because you mentioned you do two things in general. You're the game developer as well as you have the remind what's called again, Windy's Direct or the this
well, no, the community is called the Jamaica Game Developer Society.
Direct,
The
right?
Windies Direct is a showcase that we organized and put on earlier
Okay.
last month, actually. Um, but the answer to that is kind of one and the same. So, I've had a lifelong love of like illustration and art and technology, and I've always kind of jumped between like trying to do both. So, um, I'll have stints where I'm just drawing like crazy, and then I'll have other stints where I'm not drawing at all, but I'm like programming or
Mm.
stuff like that. Um, Game development just kind of felt like it made sense because it's like you can kind of combine both.
Both. Yeah.
So I kind of stumbled into that. Um,
Always
I don't
happens, doesn't
remember
it?
kind of because at the same time I was like thinking about that, like I was going into university and I decided to go to UA and around my second year, I can't remember years right now, so I can't tell you exactly when, but the movie called the indie game movie
There's an indie
came
game.
out, which yes, that came out, and it kind of showed that hey, you don't necessarily need to go to San Francisco or California or about to like make video games. You can like just build it with you and a friend, and
Mm.
that inspired me to kind of just try. I kind of just started teaching myself games, and that has kind of just been a thing for me now. So I just work on small projects, either as a hobbyist or in some capacity, like for over 9 years at this point,
Oh
like
well.
uh, as an indie. And yeah, from there is just kind of just refining that, building on that, learning more about myself and about my creative process.
No,
It's the most fulfilling. But yeah, so that's
it's a
like the
good answer.
big why. Yes, it's a good answer, but it's like this big why, and then somewhere along the way, I kind of met some friends who kind of resonated with the idea,
Mm.
and that's where the JGDS came from.
Okay. So is you started that just with the intent of sharing what you're working on with the small community of people that you knew, or was that to give back to the community? Like, what exactly?
No, like all of us, like at the beginning, all of us were like, okay, we want to go indie, we want to make games full time, like in whatever that means. So we were just kind of supporting each other and sharing stuff with each other, and then over time we invite more people in, and then the pandemic hit, and then it kind of grew a bit larger than it used to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So Taj, what led you to become an illustrator who draws sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes you just, you just want to draw, and then you just say, but I think it started like in different. I feel like a lot of us have that thing where there's like different stages or like different things that kind of set you on a career, like on a career path. Because I would say that at first it was more of this thing where I wanted to make comics, just like obsessed with making comics. So yeah, I would go home. I remember when I was in high school, I would go home literally every day, like every day relentlessly, and just draw a full page, like one full page of a comic. So every day I go home, draw like one page, like draw it and ink one page, and then like the next day just like do that like relentlessly. And I think that's kind of where I learned to draw. Like that's where I guess I developed my skills more, because I guess lots of people like talk about natural talent. So I guess all of us know that there's a lot of work that goes in. I was just obsessed. I was just obsessed with making this comic, and I would just go home and draw every day. And I would make these different comics, like over different periods of time. Some way longer, some way shorter. No one will ever see them because I will probably burn them before anyone sees
Well,
them.
that omits my question then.
Just in case anyone wants to ask. No, some of them I actually did publish online back when
I vaguely remember seeing
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, there were like some color ones and like some really short ones that I published online, but for the most part, I think it was fine to do certain things just to learn and just to practice for yourself. It's not, I don't think necessarily everything has to be for an audience initially. Like it's okay to just make some work and it's just you figuring it out, or and I think that some things it's good for people to do the process. Some things it's okay if you just do it just to work something out.
yeah.
I think like my obsession started with wanting to do comics, and then it kind of like I fell off of art completely. It was kind of one of those things where it didn't really feel like society took it seriously. So I was like, okay, I guess I should just the architecture because it's at least I can still draw.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So yeah, I applied for architecture in UTech and I got rejected for it. And it wasn't like, I think it was just like, it was like, one of those letters, oh, we're full for the year, blah, 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 blah. I was like, all right. So I worked at my uncle's design studio for about a year. This was between like high school and Edna. And it was the same, I don't know if you guys know that, well, Ikem should know this. I don't know if you guys know the mother's patty ad, the patty cheese, yeah, we did that. I sat down in that studio. Yeah, we're working on that commercial and stuff. I remember him kind of saying, oh, like, yeah, you should, because I was just going to just like, I don't know, I was just kind of figuring things out, and it was just like, oh, you should just go to Edna. At least the first year at Edna and see, how that plays out and stuff like that. So I think I just kind of like while working at the studio, I was just doing like this personal illustration, and that's when I kind of started to upload to DeviantArt and stuff. And I remember going to Edna, and like I remember there was this like turning point where someone would ask, not a turning point, but I just actually remember this the other day. Like I remember I was drawing and someone would ask me, I'm sorry, mute your phones, guys, I'm sorry. Someone would ask me, why do you like, what are these for? Like they'd see all like the artworks that I did, and they're like, oh, what are these for? Like, what you gonna do with these? And I was just like, what do you mean? What do you gonna do with that? I was like, I'm doing them. Like, what do you mean? And his question wasn't necessarily like a deep philosophical question. It was genuinely like, he's like, is this for money? You're doing this for a company? You're selling these? And I was like, no, I just draw these things. Like a lot of us just draw things. Like we just make things because we feel like we need to make them. I think that, and the funny thing is, I think that to this point I've carried that ethos throughout. where it's kind of just about making things. Like, of course, the business part will come to it, and of course, the business side is there. I always found it more important to there's something that you want to see in the world and you kind of just make it. And I think that's just the ethos of everything, of why I do this. That the ethos of why I do all of this is
That's a very
there's things that
deep
you want to see.
meaning that you ended up having for something you seem to have stumbled into by accident.
Yeah, I know it's funny because I would say it wasn't necessarily so much because I always knew that I wanted to do art. I don't think it ever, or draw at least in some capacity, but I think it was just a thing where a lot of people, I can tell you a lot of people fall for this, where a lot of like you meet them in art school, you meet them at whatever school, you meet them in friend groups. There's always that person who started out really interested in art and then they kind of just did something else, and it could have just been and like it just kind of shows that anyone could that could easily have been anyone. Like you could easily just been a person who was just like this is not really working out for me. Let me do something else. So it's I wouldn't necessarily say so much about women, it's just so much about a thing where sometimes if you just meet the right people and kind of make certain decisions, your life can kind of pivot, and not to say that my life would be any worse or any better if I didn't do this, but maybe it would have been better. But anyway, it's it's not to say that, or you'll never know that, but it's just kind of like life and like these kind of things kind of happen in a way where what needs to happen will kind of just happen, so
Yep, it's true. All right, Joshua, so why are you doing what you're doing currently?
I don't know what else. Honestly, yeah, I mean, not a similar. Weird. I have a very similar possibly, like, I was in CSEC or picking subject for CSEC, so I kind of just picked them for architecture because which is where the money was at. And then even before I didn't apply for it though. I was kind of so this doesn't sound like me. It seemed like situation where like it's an oversaturated or it's a very saturated.
Everybody wants to do architecture at some point.
Yeah, super competitive, and I don't care enough. I didn't see it enough value in me pursuing it. So I got the two. It was I was getting by, but yeah. I mean, I've always had a love for art and expressing myself and understanding the world through making things and absorbing the things around me and things. So it just kind of made sense. And then applying that, I didn't have much points of reference. I was just kind of looking online and seeing stuff, and actually someone asked the interview yesterday, and I was asked this, and I said, like literally one of the people that I was looking up to was Tash. Actually, you were one of the men them that like really gave me a point of reference that like, oh, this actually makes sense, actually draw and earn from it, but yeah, like after a while it's just kind of what I'm doing now is a lot more complex than what it started out as. I was really just doing illustration at first and started to kind of incorporate more of my interests as time went by and as opportunities came to expand and thing up. I've asked for help. so I've asked Nathaniel, I've asked Sikim for help. Man like Leo, man like here's like Asia. We've grown. This has grown. I'm very grateful for all the help we get.
Alright, everybody seems like they had just a calling to do this thing, but it stumbled into the profession somehow. So why in the Caribbean? What made you guys decide to try to make it work out here rather than going abroad and just staying abroad if you had left? Like, what made you say, hey, you know, I'm gonna stay in Jamaica, I'm gonna work here predominantly?
That's interesting.
Not to
I
say that
feel
you
like
don't have, sorry to cut you. Not to say that you don't have international clients currently and you don't do work internationally, but like you started in Jamaica and you didn't leave the country entirely. Like you're still based here. Like,
yeah,
yeah, as you were saying.
yeah. It's interesting. I remember I went to Woolmer's and we had a career day, and we had like there's this guy called Marlon James, this author.
Oh,
I don't know if you know him. Yeah, and I think he yeah, Booker, like big writer in the world and stuff. But he came, and I remember one of the things that I felt very sad about. I think, well, yeah, there's like a lot of health stuff going on with my family, and I remember thinking that, oh, I won't be able to afford some of these places that like they brought pamphlets from, like these universities abroad and stuff. And then I remember Marlon James was talking about him being a writer and stuff. And this was before I think he was as big as he is now, because he's like about to do a HBO show and like a bunch of stuff.
I did not
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah. So and then I knew about other Ulma's alumni that like did things like Sean Paul and Wayne Marshall and some other guys. And I think I don't know if I thought about it like directly, but I guess I was just like, oh well, people out here, you know, doing things. So I guess it never seemed so sad anymore that, you know, maybe I can't do it, you know, like maybe it doesn't have to be a necessity, but even me going to Edna was kind of a mistake. Like I was supposed to go to sixth form, but I had done mostly science subjects because there was a point where I was going to be a doctor. So
Really?
and yeah, and then I flunked out like 1 year, and they had these things called fast streams, and in the fast streams you're allowed to do like 7 or 8 subjects or something like that. But because I fell out of the fast stream from flunking, I had to drop a subject. And my chemistry teacher was my homeroom teacher, and she kind of hated me or so. So I kind of just dropped chemistry. And then when sixth form came around, like I passed in well enough to go to sixth form, but the subjects I wanted to do to become a filmmaker, which is what I decided that I'm going to do now. Like I thought, okay, I want to do literature, I want to do like sociology, maybe like history, and then art, right? To be worldly and whatever. But there's too much competition for literature. I couldn't get that. I didn't do like some of the prerequisites to do sociology, so I couldn't get that. And it was like, yeah, you can do math, you can do biology, you can do physics. And I was just like, damn, I don't think I can do that anymore. And yeah, like I think I turned on sixth form, and it was like a thing because I didn't really have a plan or anything. And there was a situation that worked out where my dad actually called Edna Manley, because I guess I don't know how it happened exactly, but he called Edna Manley, and he was like, I think I had a cell phone at the time, and I called and he said, yeah, I talked to somebody down there, so just go down to Edna or something like that. And they had already they already started the year, I think, or something, but there were spaces, and I had a cousin who probably went to Edna before, and there was some connection where they knew somebody, and they were like, "Oh well, we have some spaces, so if you come and do a drawing exam and whatever, then you could start, this year late." And then I ended up doing that and getting in,
Okay, so
and so
it wasn't
um
intentional, is what you're trying to say.
so it wasn't intentional to stay here.
Yeah.
And I guess back to like the whole international thing, like because it was such a like flubs into Edna. I guess after that it kind of like completely erased like the whole like going abroad thing, for me. So
Okay, so
yeah,
you
and
saw
then
there were some opportunities, and you saw other persons in some creative field making it happen out here.
yeah,
So,
and yeah, for sure.
All right. Me, it's an interesting question because I don't think I've ever gotten a question like this, or like anybody seriously asked me like, why am I just based out here? But I had like in Expo 6, I think I had applied for Edna actually, because again interested in illustration and such. It had turned me down initially based off of what I was focusing on in terms of art style at the time, which still is slightly a sore point, but it is what it is.
I think I know what you
typical Jamaican. It's not fine art.
Yeah, it's not fine art. It's too much anime. There was a conversation about like, is anime inherently perverse or something to that effect?
That's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole nother conversation. And as a 15, 16-year-old, I was not prepared to have that conversation in any real capacity, But I went into UA, leaned on the technical side, did computer science, and then saw that movie, which kind of showed that you can do it here. You don't necessarily need to go abroad and try and figure that out. Because before that, I really thought that if I wanted to do game design, I had to do it abroad. I wanted to do game development, I had to do it abroad, and it kind of just showed that the only thing that was stopping me from like making these things was like me. Like I could figure it out on my own. I could use the internet. I could Google, check out forums. I mean, this was back when that was a big thing. Popping in on forums and checking out those posts and sharing knowledge that way. So that is kind of why I stayed, because that was the pivoting point for like, if I'm going to stay or if I'm going to go abroad. Then adult life happened after graduation, got a job, still did my stuff on the side, still have a full-time job, but I still develop my own creative stuff and help build out the community at the same time. And I'm not going to say, going abroad is out of the cards, because there are a lot of factors on that, but proud of where I'm from, and I'm looking forward to carrying that with me going forward, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So I like that you mentioned that you dipped in on forums and things like that for some kind of guidance.
Yeah.
Internet is
Take
an
source.
amazing resource.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So yes, Touch, what made you decide to stay working within the Caribbean?
You just have much of a choice. Just but honestly, I think that I kind of, to be fair, initially I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave initially because I think the things that I thought that I wanted to do and the things that I thought was possible, wouldn't be possible here. And that's a fair thing to feel at that time. And I think the internet kind of has just completely changed that. It's completely changed, the whole concept of having to be in a specific place in a or a specific time situation to do what you want to do. It's the reason why a lot of people used to go to New York or LA or wherever to do what they're doing, because those were the places or the hubs that you went to if you wanted to do a certain career. So I think it was a fair feeling to have at the time, but realizing that there is so much that can be done with this thing called internet. Like there's just so much that you can reach, so many communities out there. And I think kind of realizing that made things a lot more, easier to deal with, kind of similar to what Glenn was saying, going on forums. Not that I went on forums necessarily, but it's a situation of like you see a gateway to the rest of the world.
Because you mentioned DeviantArt.
Yeah, exactly. So like DeviantArt was like, I think that first gateway to the rest of the world, because I remember posting there earlier on. I remember the first time I got a feature was from a DeviantArt post.
Okay.
It was this website called one of those like art blogs. I don't think they're really that big now, but it was like an art blog called Creative Tempest, and I'll never forget it. And they did like this. They just like found my work completely randomly on DeviantArt, and they're like, "Oh, this is cool," and they did like a feature on it. And they featured the work on that website, and on the website there were like a bunch of other features from a bunch of different artists from around the world. Just like Shepard Fairey were featured on it. It was like a really just like diverse like group of art, so it wasn't necessarily all just like illustrators or fancy artists. It was more of a design blog, and I had like these different artists. And of course, not to say that it's necessarily any official capacity, but I guess there was this feeling of, well, I'm on the same blog as these other artists that are from around the world, and that kind of gave me a feeling of validation, because you kind of seen this person sees you in at least not necessarily the same, but a similar or close enough light to feel like I'll feature this artist and then also feature this artist from Jamaica, and it kind of gave, I think that was like an interesting point of like, okay, this is something that even though I'm here, it still works out, and there are people still see what I do, and I think that that kind of really changed. I think if it wasn't for the internet and maybe like several moments like that, it would have changed my whole perspective on not staying. But then I think it became more deliberate after a while about staying, because I felt like it was important for people to see it happen.
Well, clearly it was, because even Joshua had mentioned you were one of the persons that.
It was important for me that people saw that you can be here and do that, because growing up, a lot of the thing is that you can't do anything, you can't make money from art, you can't do anything from art, you can't do anything from, not even just like, and it would be a very narrow field of art that you could make money from. You had to specifically be a graphic designer, you had to specifically be this or that, and I think I'm naturally I don't really like people telling me what to do at all. So I kind of I took that anyway, when that happens, I kind of take offense to it. So I just was like, all right, well, we'll see. And then, so it became more deliberate in that way of, and not like as I got you or see, but more of like, not for people who were doubting, but for people who needed to see it, people who need to see it still. I think I found it important to do that. So that's really why. And not to say that I won't leave, because some things do have its limits. And not to say that I'll leave forever if I ever do, but I think that everything in its time is important, and doing things in its time is important. So
yeah, I mean, it's important to know that you still have been here for a time, so whether any of us leave or not, it worked while we were here. So yeah, Joshua, why Jamaica? Because I know you did leave for a bit and then you came back, so interested to hear that side of things.
Yeah, well, I mean, I left to study. First and foremost. My plan was, right, me stay for a little bit after I study, and then come back and see what I can do here. Hopefully out of, with some form of roots abroad that would be beneficial for me future. And I think I was able to do that. I ended up coming back right before the pandemic hit.
Great.
Yeah. I thought that maybe I was going to spend a bit more time abroad, to be honest with you, but I don't think I could have come back at a better time. If anything, I learned from the pandemic was that like people still need art, people still need music, and people still need packaging for their things and internet presence and all that. And you can do that from anywhere, and I never doubted that I could do it here. It's just I felt like I had similar feelings of like, I don't know maybe I need to wait a couple years, and thankfully, I guess I could say, I'm not going to say thanks to the pandemic, but like, thanks to the circumstances that the pandemic has allowed to happen. Where I see, this industry going, kind of got closer to that space a lot faster. Just a general. I mean, it's not just pandemic. It's a couple other things too. My team will paint murals. And we'll have about 5 downtown. Just because of the what's happening in real estate in downtown Kingston right now. We're pushing that gentrification. You know what I mean? OG word. we're reluctant participants in that, but make a space cool, and then it comes in. But
okay, so opportunities were essentially presented to you to make staying here feasible in some sense.
Yeah, the opportunities came. The opportunities came back.
All right, so this is more of like an open for everybody to answer whoever feels. How do you manage to be financially stable in the Caribbean? So that's a touchy subject for everybody because financially stable in air quotes, we're surviving, but how do you manage?
I mean, the business answer I would say is like diversify the risk, right? I mean, take on projects, jobs, opportunities that allow you to cover expenses while being creative, right? That's a textbook's answer. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that.
No, yeah, it's funny you said the business thing because it's just probably 4 or 5 years ago that I started learning about business. So that this whole time, like while I was at Edna, I was freelancing, and I guess I was just in the right place at the right time. Well, I kind of did create opportunities for myself by like asking to intern for people or doing videos for free and just like doing things, but no business knowledge, no marketing knowledge really. And it was really just me trying to do things that I thought would be cool and would push me in the direction of being a filmmaker. So it was like a lot of doing stuff for free, doing stuff for cheap, and then I'd learn stuff on YouTube, and then I'd get hired to do this freelance project, and somebody would see it. And, it was always like word of mouth. Even like one of the reasons I feel like I even got so confident in my abilities. I don't know if Taj remember, like he had his final year show and he had this logo for Figment, which was his thesis project, and I did like the animation for it. And then based on that animation, like he was working with Protege at the time, and then Protege, he must have shown Protege or something, and Protege's like, yo, that's cool. And then he like hired us for a bunch, like the group of us for a bunch of projects and stuff. And but yeah, just had to say, like, learning the business stuff. There are always opportunities, but learning the business stuff has made such an improvement in like being consistent and sustaining and like learning systems and like learning ways like creating value for clients and understanding like your value proposition and like how to sell upsell and how to do things that make it more sustainable. But if you can just stumble into like making money for sure just by doing stuff and putting it out there, but like the business stuff definitely like helps you make it more sustainable.
Just to clarify for the viewers, remember Ikem said that he offered to do things for free. People were asking him to do, so it's a choice.
Yeah,
it's a choice.
And it's interesting because I think I was very strategic with it. It was like whenever I saw somebody that like made me feel like, oh, yo, this is different. Like there's this band called Acmatic. That was probably the first video I did for free, and like maybe I was sheltered or whatever, but I'd never heard like people making music like that in Jamaica, and I was like, yo,
yeah, that's true.
I want to make a video for them. And I was just like literally like, yo, just pay for like this equipment, I'll make this video, I'll edit it, whatever. And they were like, all right, cool. And I remember that ended up on like TVJ, and then I was like,
did not know that. I didn't even know their music was well known enough to be on TVJ.
It got featured in a thing.
That's pretty cool.
And funnily enough, there was I don't know if you guys know Cone. So he told me like he saw that on TVJ and he had never like that kind of inspired him to do art stuff because he was like because he was like, yo, I didn't know people in Jamaica was doing stuff. Yeah. And he's like super, like I was like, yo, dude, what?
Yeah, he's like really good.
So trust me, it's like I feel like everybody here who does stuff for free or like it doesn't, you get a start for sure, because if you don't have any experience or proof of concepts, sometimes that's the door in.
Yeah,
but learning the business stuff, learning the business stuff definitely is the factor that
All right. Well, I guess I can go as well. I think it's a complex. It's a complex answer. Because I think that really it depends on one, like what is it that you want to do, like, what is it that you want to achieve. I think that's probably very important to think about a lot of the times. Like what I mean, because if we're talking about financially stable, you could do something else. Like that probably give you more money instantly. So like if you are like in a faster way, or in a more or in a more stable way, but I think that if we're talking about in art specifically and how to like, become financially stable independently, or if you're doing work for a client or working for a company, I think that lots of these things kind of factor into like, what is it that you want to do? Like how is it that you want to, what is it that you want to create and how do you want to monetize that? Or what you're willing to monetize and, and I think that that's one of the first important steps is kind of knowing what is it that you want to do, or at least figuring out to some degree. Because no one is going to know from the jump, But I think once you do that, you can kind of because it's a situation of kind of figuring out what is it that you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do in terms of or take on, to say. Because I think what it is that you can end up in a situation where, some people end up in a situation where, oh, well, this is very money forward and this is helping me financially, but it's draining in this way, or, I don't necessarily like working in this type of environment or this type of situation. So I feel like it's good to understand what's it that you want to create and what you want to do. And there's always value in those things. Like, I think there's nothing that people can do or create that there isn't some value in.
Okay.
And I think that like sometimes we look at, so I look at this, right? Even when I look at the situation of when I just used to make things, and that same guy asked like, "Oh, what did you do this for?" You know, like, and I was like, "Because I like doing it." The thing is, like, what I think a lot of artists don't understand sometimes, or a lot of us don't realize that we're literally making assets out of thin air. Not like basically, like you're basically making an asset out of it. You're making something that is worth something. I mean, paints, brushes, sure, whatever, but like really and truly, you're making something of value out of thin air. A lot of people can't do that.
That's true.
Like if you think about it, like you're making something that can literally be someone would want to buy as a piece, or someone wants to license for something, or someone wants to, you know, make into a movie. I think about certain artists that they just did an art book, and they're like, and then HBO saw the art book and they're like, man, would you love to make a movie from this art book? So they're both making money from the art book, and then they're making money from licensing the imagery from the art book into this. So there's so much to be made from what you create, like everything you make, even if it is that it's not useful right there and then, it goes towards like building a portfolio that is literally just like assets that you can use to make that, like to make money in a way. Like I think about the fact that there's things that I've done years ago, and then Apple is like, we'd like to license this artwork for this situation, like something that I made 6 years ago. They're like, oh, can we license this? And it's like, yeah, this is the agreement, you know, whatever. And I think that's kind of where the business understanding of things come in, you know, what is value to you and what, you know, people can get value out of, because it's always important to remember that everything you make has value, and I don't think people should necessarily devalue themselves. Devalue themselves, and not in a situation that you're not going to do something for free, because that's, as I said, that's a personal decision on how to know how to do that. But know that what you're doing values something. So like, even with Ken, when you're saying when you did that Matic video, like even if you didn't have the thing, like you know that valued
It's
something.
valued something. Yeah.
Valued to culturally valued, you know, and then that again turns around into other things. Like that, I think it's always to remember that, you know, like you don't have to, something doesn't have to be initially and right there and then make you money. It's always a situation of like creating assets and value for yourself by doing the things that you're interested in. Like it's kind of a win-win in a way. And you know, of course, it's, and I'm gonna knock or say that it's not tough, especially at the start.
Yeah,
I think if it's something that you kind of see through, you never know. One day someone could be like, let's make an entire movie of this. Let's make, you know, and it doesn't even have to go that far. Let's make some packaging from this. You know, there's so much we make, and I just love for people to always remember that, even if it is a situation where you feel like, oh, right now I'm doing this and I'm not getting paid for it, or right now, like there's always value in almost anything that you make.
Can I add some to that?
Yeah.
Can I add some to that again?
Add some.
I think, yeah, that's completely right. Yeah, there's always value for sure. I think, one of the things I didn't really understand when I was doing all that stuff, is that, so as an entrepreneur, right, one of the things that you do is take on a lot of risk, and usually the more risk you take on is the greater chance for a larger reward, right? So you mentioned like just making things, right? Things that you're interested in. I think one of the things that you should keep in mind, or is a good idea to think about, is who your intended audience is. And when you're making things that you enjoy, you know, that audience could be you know what I mean? And I think one of the cool things about business, like thinking about like a MVP, a minimum viable product, right, is that you think about the audience, and then you think about like creating some kind of value for them. So say you're somebody who is really into anime, and you're black and you're from Jamaica, right? There may be a lot of anime characters out there, but maybe it's a very small percentage that are black anime characters, and there's a very small percentage that are black Caribbean characters. And you're not alone as being somebody who is black and from the Caribbean and loves anime. So if you create a character that represents you, you're creating value, because that's something that isn't being done a lot. And once people see it, they're like, oh, yo, this is special. You know what I mean? So
something you had mentioned, which I really agree with. Oh, sorry, you weren't finished.
Oh no, I was just saying. So yeah, so like, if you're doing something for free, like it does make sense to keep in mind like who you're making it for, and if you're trying to earn money for it, like I don't think there's anything wrong with just making stuff and not thinking about it. But if you're trying to make money for it, like just think about, okay, how are the ways that I can stand out and make this, something that the marketplace like is underrepresented, so that I can, give I have opportunities from it. Yeah.
So
And just one quick note: nothing is made for free, by the way. Everyone pays. Someone pays the cost.
True. That's true.
Just-
That's true.
Nothing is made for free.
So I mean, what I've gathered so far is like, putting yourself out there, marketing yourself, whichever means necessary. You guys had mentioned just doing things, trying to do things that you enjoy doing at least, or as Ikem had said, which I 100% agree with, is you take on risk. And so a lot of staying financially stable ends up being making that choice between what, as Taj said, what you're willing to do versus what you're not willing to do, and what kind of risk you're willing to take on. And I know as a workaholic, I've done a lot of projects that I didn't necessarily care for that much, but it was just, putting food on the table, food in my mouth. And my other fellow workaholic over there, Joshua, who has contacted me a couple times for some of his projects. How about you, Joshua? How does, because you had mentioned that you had gotten a lot of opportunities after coming back, and I know you have just been running since.
Well, as far as like understanding the business side of things, well, here's the thing. There's no. I feel like that's one of the things when you have a creative education that we're lacking is the business side, and I think that's a whole half of this industry is understanding how to, there's something as simple as pricing. I remember at a professional practices class when I was in school, and sir,
they actually taught that. Wow.
Well, here's the thing: you talk about pricing, and the price and the answer to how to price things is equally as ambiguous as this online. Right? Like you're not getting a straight answer. And really and truly, there's no straight answer. But the reality is, you have to make that decision for yourself.
Yeah.
What is value? How much do you see? What kind of life you want to live, and what goals you have for yourself. It's not something that's just going to fall into place. You have to be very deliberate about what kind of income you want to earn and how do you framework yourself or frame yourself, put yourself in the position to achieve that.
Yeah.
Don't want to buy a house. You see me? Like, I can't buy a house. I'm not 17 with 50, but that don't make sense. But also, I watch a lot of The Future, which is this platform that's very educational, very helpful.
Repeat that name of the platform?
The Future.
PHE, Future, without the E at the end.
Yeah, without the E at the end. FUTUR.
Yeah, Crystal the Blue. He, there's a lot of explanations as to like how to even just before pricing things, just understanding value. And a lot of YouTube, there are a lot of YouTube videos that and like things he's done in the past, just breaking that down and how to price things.
Yeah, really good resource.
Yeah. And it's the same thing you're saying, Taj, about and it came about, exchanging value. I've kind of shifted my understanding of, all right, this is what this costs to how much value I'm adding to my product and how much value I'm when you do something for free, for example, that's just something of a case of that's a long-term investment for doing something for free. right? You know, there has to be an exchange of some sort, regardless of you're getting money or not.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting a product. Maybe you're getting I don't do anything for exposure,
I was about
but
to say.
that's something that is of value to you.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah, if it's of value to you, then I mean,
If you
I
need
can't.
exposure, that's a valid reason to do
Yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah.
It depends on what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the goal or the things that you want to achieve. If exposure falls into that, then it's of value to you. Then I can't tell you that to not do that. But anyway, just yeah.
A word on exposure though, because in sorry to cut you off, Joshua. Just one word, like because of social media, like the gatekeepers for the exposure,
Mm.
like they don't really like you can build up your own exposure. You know what I mean? You can create a page and get your own followers and build your own exposure. Yeah, go on to
That's
Yeah.
no. Yeah, continue.
Yeah.
Joshua.
Well, the other thing
Actually,
actually, the other thing I was going to say too is that like when there are two things that we're given or can get. There are two resources that we have to bear in mind, and one is time and one is money. You know, if you're donating your time or you're giving your time to something, you better get either it's either supposed to save you some time or give you money or both. You know what I mean? The whole exposure thing, that is a case by case situation. I've definitely done things and know that I'm not getting money out of it, but it was worth my time to do.
Yeah.
You know, if it's something that like if someone is and the thing is that you have to you know anytime I do business with people, I don't do business with people I never had a conversation with straight up. And if it's a case where like I'm donating my time or if I'm giving you something, if I'm giving you my time, I'm not getting financial return for it, I should still see where like, there's some form of value. Maybe it makes me feel good. Maybe I know that this is helping somebody else, a community of people.
Personal gain is important.
Yeah. So
Fulfillment.
yeah, and also
Feeling good is-
you have to gauge it too. It can't be that rent is due tomorrow or rent is due next week, and I'm going to spend 5 days painting a mirror when I could be making money elsewhere.
Yeah.
You can't do that. That's poor business practice. And I think we need to get out of our heads, stop being we have a script, we have a perception of being introverted or like we kind of want to lean into that. Not with that, no. A business person first, your artist second, and that's balance it is.
That's very
That's
important.
Can I give a rundown for like any young people who starting out? Learn about overhead, right? So as Taj said, like everything costs something. So when you're sitting down and you're working on your computer, you're burning electricity. Your computer costs something. You know what I mean? You're spending your time when you could be doing something that's opportunity cost, right? So like factor in how much food you eat, how much the food you eat a month cost. Like probably just sit down and calculate like, okay, on average, how much do I spend for food? How much do I spend on transportation? How much do I spend to live where I live? How much do I spend for electricity? And then break down like how much it would take for you to pay all those bills, like how much one day of work costs you. And then whenever you take on a job and you say, okay, this is going to take 5 days, add on some extra days because maybe some going to happen and you know what I mean, it's going to take longer than you think. And then that should be like your base price, because if you can't cover what it costs you to live, then you're paying the person to do the work.
Yeah.
They're not paying you. You know what I mean?
That's the largest takeaway that you should get from this video, is that in order to be financially stable, as Joshua had mentioned, you have to really look at the lifestyle that you want to live. And as Kim has mentioned a while ago, do a breakdown of all of the costs of your living and look at that you can afford that. That also goes into pricing your work and to make sure that you can cover those costs.
your Adobe subscription,
And
your
yeah,
Netflix subscription. You know what I mean? Going
yeah, I
out.
just want to add like a quick like summary around this entire question. I saw a quote the other day about pricing, and they said that if you are not embarrassed by the price you are asking, like in yourself, you're probably asking too low when you're passing that on to somebody. And the thinking again is covering your overhead, covering all the expenses, covering the opportunity costs, because that is a thing as well. Joshua mentioned like, why am I going to be doing this mural when I could be doing something else? That is a consideration. Not to downplay, let's not say use the word exposure. There's volunteer work. There's things that you can volunteer that can help establish your brand, network opportunities, things like that. But at the end of the day, in order to be stable, right? If you're going for that goal, you're going to have to ask for a fair share. Um, and the only thing I can probably add to this entire conversation, because I'm coming from it just from a little bit of a different angle, because I'm coming from illustration slash programming, and then that has morphed into like project management and production work.
Oh,
right. So where I do freelance at this point in time, where I prefer to do freelance, is going to be in like project management and production work, and I do have a full-time job on top of all of that to try and balance everything, because I know when I'm looking at these budget sheets that I'm doing for projects and stuff like that, I kind of get a feeling like, oh, this is how much it costs to live in Jamaica in today, in right now. This is what rent looks like. This is what your water bill looks like.
yeah.
So when you quote them a project that's going to take 2 weeks to do, and 30 of your time, 30 hours of your time, if you're not like slightly uncomfortable with the number, probably charging too low. I have never had a project in my 9+ years where I felt like I really charged them too high. I've never felt that way, and it's not being greedy. It's just that normally it comes back to I really probably should have. They hit that nth revision, I probably should have charged them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think like, I mean, one, because I saw that you guys added the future link to the chat there, and I guess hopefully we'll add that to something that everyone else can see. But I think in general, I think going back to the pricing thing, I think that it's important to also just look up, because it's hard to find, but I think a good resource is to find, depending on the field that you're working on. And I know Jamaica doesn't have guilds for all of the fields, but if there's a guild, a field that you're working in, look at the prices that they set within that they have that are base prices within that guild, what they kind of fight for them to earn, kind of is some of that off of that. You also have to take in consideration cost of living of where they are and where you are, like all these other aspects, so you kind of gauge it in that way. But I think it's a good way to gauge what you should charge. Is not necessarily a good way to gauge is just kind of looking at what maybe the general guild, the field,
industry
that
standard.
the industry standard, or even if it's a product, what is it that your competitors are selling those products for? So it's just a good way to gauge things. So I would say just
exactly what I had to do for animation at one point in time was look up the guilds abroad and see what they're charging for something, and then try to figure out. I mean, that does take some knowledge of your marketplace, being in the
exactly.
you are. So
because you know that they're not doing this.
you know that your country might not pay what they're charging abroad, so you have to be competitive at some point in time.
Yeah, just like Glenn was saying, like sometimes you should be embarrassed. Like ask the price, and the most they can say is we can't afford that, and you guys can come to some kind of agreement. But I would
they negotiate.
Reduce your scope.
Hopefully they negotiate. But I mean, I know some people don't. I think that's the risk that a lot of people are afraid of when it comes to the price thing, because they're afraid of losing the opportunity by looking too high. But I would say that sometimes it is. I think it's, as I say, you kind of have to take, risk assessment. You have to do all these different things and what is worth it. But like sometimes, if you definitely feel like it's worth, this is the cost that I would need to do this, or this is, and if they don't agree, it's probably better off, because it would just be a time and energy sink
There is
Yeah,
a point of
for sure.
privilege to be able to deny a project, but at the
Yeah,
same
exactly. There's
time,
a yeah,
you do have to acknowledge that some things are just worth letting go. It's not.
some yeah something
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's not worth that.
yeah, because even though it is a privilege to kind of be able to say no to a project, um, there is also a real chance that if you try and compromise your price just to try and get that project, you might be compromising a lot more.
Yeah, you can put yourself in
Right?
a worse place.
We're compromising the industry
Yeah, that as well.
Yeah,
That's a very
because what
valid point. Is you
what
can
Yeah.
happens is that
make it
people
worse
are
for
like,
everybody else.
yeah, you make it worse for everyone else, and I don't mean to put that weight on any one person because it's not like that. But really and truly, I think a lot of the okay. So I've had this issue where I see, yeah, I'm gonna get into something. I had this issue where I would see a lot of artists, especially digital artists, kind of undervalue the fact that they make digital art.
Yeah.
Um, and it gets me upset a lot because I think that it's a lie that they kind of believe. It's a lie that they believe that the things that I did this in this way and it's not necessarily for anything. So because of that, it's, it only should value this or it doesn't really value anything. It's just a JPEG, it's just a whatever. And I think that even before the controversial NFTs and all that stuff, I think digital art or whatever you make always values stuff. You don't need a particular system of money or anything to tell you that your work was valued apart. Like it always, and it will always value something. You spend time working on it. You spend energy working on it. You spend, as you said, you can say electricity, all that stuff. No, there is value behind those things, and I think that needs to be kind of a reset in our thinking in general when it comes to this art space. And I'm assuming a lot of people who will be tuned into this do digital art or work in
More than likely.
Yeah.
So like I would say that it's definitely like looking at all the avenues and ways that this thing has value that you're making, and not to look at it as this, I made a JPEG. It's not that simple.
One thing on top of that too, I feel like it's probably a thing where people might get discouraged, like if they say a price and somebody says no, and like as you said, like they're afraid of losing the opportunity. Like just because one person doesn't value it doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who value it like way more
And funny enough,
than you would even, and that might just not be your ideal client. Like you might just need to think about who is the ideal client, who are the people who value that. So there are people who, for instance, might value that. Yeah, they might have reasons that you can't even comprehend why they value, but like say somebody values the fact that you're a black person making art. That could be there in their head. They might not say it to you, but like there are people out there who that's their value. They want to support people from a certain area, or they might want to support somebody who does this specific style of thing. You know what I mean? And with the internet, it's not like super easy to find them all the time, but like it's possible. And one of the ways that you don't have to spend the time searching is by putting things out there, like doing like your own content marketing. Like if you make things that you want to do, like make more of the things that you want to make.
Yeah.
Put it out there, and the people who like learn about marketing, because if you're just posting one time and then you just get 2 likes and you feel sad, you're probably not doing enough like posting and put marketing and finding ways in which like people that you want to find it will find it. Like you might have to just think about, okay, who are the people who might value, for instance. Okay, sorry if I'm going around in a circle, but I'm going to get back to it. So say you make a tutorial, right, on YouTube. There are people out there who want to learn a skill. You can showcase your artwork while making a tutorial, you're providing value. When you go on YouTube, because YouTube is searchable and they don't like take into account the age of the post, like say a TikTok. So like they don't it doesn't matter if you posted it 5 years ago or 10 years ago, like it will probably show up if somebody's looking for what you're making. You're providing value. You're searchable, you're findable because you're creating this tutorial that somebody wants to earn value from. And if you do it right, you're also promoting your own work, you know what I mean? And it can find an audience. It might take a while, but like if you do stuff like that enough with in mind, okay, I want to provide value in some way. I want to make strange things that people don't make. Like this, there's something that I really want to see and nobody else is doing it. I'm going to do it. Like go with that mindset of okay, I'm going to create value on with my artwork and it will spread. You know what I mean? Like look up there's this marketer called Seth Godin. He has a podcast called the Akimbo Podcast. He wrote a book called Purple Cow. That's a really good book to read. He also wrote this book that's for free called The Bootstrapper's Bible. And it teaches you how to like just think in terms of, you know, like if you don't have that much money, how to, you know, get yourself out there and be seen and to show up, to ship, you know what I mean? Like that's putting out stuff. And yeah, you can create value, you can be found, and yeah, and you'll make money. Like you'll find your audience who will value it, the ideal client, and you can make money from your art.
Well, you guys have dipped into some of the other questions already. Taj, you were saying something? Add into that?
No. No, I think no. I mean, apart from the recommendations, I don't know those people, so I can't co-sign that necessarily. But I'm pretty sure I could.
Yeah. Seth Godin is legit, man.
I mean, yeah. But I think there's something to consider as well, and this is sort of a loose point, but I guess especially because a lot of us kind of market through social media and through internet. Well, I guess social media a lot. Think that people also kind of going back to what Ikem saying, not to get discouraged by not necessarily getting certain level of engagement on certain things and kind of try and keep doing things, because we still also have to remember some things we just even necessarily, no matter how good what you make is, there's some things you can't control, which is just algorithm based. There's some things that the algorithms of these social media platforms just prefer naturally. It will adapt, like sometimes they adapt depending on you kind of pushing the line. I think sometimes it's important for people to push what they think an audience wants to see, and it kind of helps that thing to adapt. But I think it's always good to remember that, because I know especially like a lot of Caribbean creatives and Black creatives, things that you make might not find a large audience soon because of an algorithm that prefers certain other looking things. I would also say not to get discouraged because of those things, because you know some things might not necessarily apply to you based on what you're making, but people might try to say will work because it might not, the algorithm might not necessarily respect or like what you do. But I think it's kind of ways to find footing in that sense and like what people may like. I think a lot of times, a lot of what I'm realizing happened with myself and anyone who kind of like early started with something is that they might have this really great idea that puts it out there, kind of realize they're not getting that lot of traction, and that kind of builds this sink. Like you kind of have this sink where like, oh, I'm putting so much work in and you know not getting that. And I think it's good to remember, you know, that the things that you kind of have to, the challenges that you have to go against. And I think that's something important to always remember when you're making anything, is challenges of these things. That's not to say you can't do something, but being aware of what these challenges are kind of help to circumvent and work around.
It goes back to understanding your marketplace.
Exactly.
If you know that you have a niche product, or you're interested in a niche type of art or whatever you're creating, games or otherwise, it's not that you can't establish yourself in that space, it might be harder because nobody is looking for it, you know.
Sometimes people don't know what they want.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
They
So
make the new thing that they want.
So yeah, let me dip into the rest of the questions. You guys have answered some of these already in the previous.
I think Joshua was saying something.
Oh, you're saying Joshua?
Alright, Joe.
Well, I was gonna say that like there are other ways to get your work out.
Yeah.
Social media is very easy.
Social media is a nice introvert tool to get in your workout. But
True.
Yeah, you get to just put things out and it pops up on everybody's phone.
yeah,
But there are other ways, you know. Before the phones, we have you know, human interaction. We have spaces, you know, environments that you can show your work.
networking is important.
Yeah, so you know, it's good to meet people. You know, go outside your house, talk to people.
Yeah, take a
Approach
break every
space.
once in a while.
Yeah, approach spaces, spend some money, show your work if you feel so inclined. You're at that point, you know. There are art fairs, there are markets, you know, where you can put your work out. You know,
And
there.
make your own events.
Yeah, people, you know, it's easy to get comfortable and just post your things and then think, oh, that's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
There's so many other ways, you know.
That
So,
leads quite well into what are the type of opportunities you guys personally look for? And I'm going to mix two questions together. And what's the method to your madness? Or is there method to your madness? I specifically want to hear from Glenn because he's on the other side of things where it's not just art, it's also programming. So, so yeah, opportunities that you look for. And what's the method to your madness?
Okay, so it's kind of in flux right now because I like the point that Joshua just raised a while ago because social media is kind of imploding just a little bit right now in this exact moment. I mean, Instagram isn't what it used to be. You're not getting as much traction and not getting the support. And Twitter is going through it a little bit as well. But how I'm getting opportunities and how I'm kind of building out answers for myself, really and truthfully, is through networking. So what's happening is that during the pandemic, a lot of people kind of just retreated to Discord and used Discord to kind of replace that face-to-face interaction that used to happen, right? So even stuff like Dreamdust popped up during that period, right? And I've used that heavily for the past 2 years. I'm in way too many Discords, and they're all over the place, really. So that's how I'm meeting people. That's how I'm building relationships. That's how I'm connecting with other people. That's how I'm promoting my work as a primary tool, really and truthfully. Being active members in all of these little sub communities, that's how I'm really kind of pushing a name for myself and building a brand within my little sliver of the industry. Locally, it's connecting with other people who are operating in the creative space. So that's like yourself, Nathan, Ikem, just learning about what you guys are doing, like showing genuine curiosity and interest, and maybe that builds into a friendship, and maybe that can build into work later on, because I know I've subcontracted a few people that I know because I like the work and I like work talking to them, so I'll subcontract them on a project or things like that. And that is how you kind build up a network that can be resilient to some of these shocks and changes that are happening to the way how creatives used to operate. Or that's my answer, really.
Yeah, it leads back to what Joshua was saying about networking is very important outside of social media. Social media is not used, in my opinion, the way it's called. It's literally the word social is in there for a reason. So if you're just going to post to put your work out there, that's great and everything, but if you don't make that connection with people, they're less likely going to contact you back for anything in the future. So
really extreme.
So yes, open for anybody else to answer, like
Yeah.
what opportunities you look for and what's the method behind that madness.
Yeah, I think for me, there's been like a I think I've been in a lot of different fields when it comes to art because I've done the murals, I've done very commercial based client project, I've done very fine arts. I think I've jumped. I tend to I remember a curator talked to me about this and she was like, you're always and you're never in one of these
All of
specific things. It's always that. So I think it depends on what the thing is. So like, so for instance, in terms of like client work, makes up a particular set of my income. I kind of like to do networking through just the clients themselves. So I guess a good example was the artwork that I've done I do a lot of like comic book covers. I don't think that's something that a lot of people I've done and I'm currently doing a bunch of things for DC.
Totally.
I've done things for Boom. I've done things book covers for Macmillan and stuff. And the DC like some of those covers started because I worked with a particular client and built up a reputation with them, and then they moved to a different company.
Oh.
Because of that relationship, that kind of connected in, and like so it's kind of a situation where kind of use those even small, because sometimes it might be a small person, a person's like small in a company or a situation, and the thing is, once you do good work with them, once you build a good rapport, they will pitch you to other people. If you pitch yourself to them properly, they'll pitch you to other people. I think that kind of has helped kind of grow this kind of snowball effect of this network of different clients who are like, oh, this person did this with him, or let's whatever, and then I'll email those people who were in that same email, who had that connection, and kind of build this network throughout these things, and always kind of end up finding a way to certain things. I think a lot of times when people see that there are certain projects I do, it's because it didn't just come up. It was a situation where, based on different connecting factors, I met with these different people. And for like the mural circuit, when I would do these different festivals and do these different jobs, I remember in 2014, because of some artwork that I made on myself on my website, I got invited to this conference in Mexico. I went to Mexico. I met this like this group of people, and this woman who helped organize this festival called Seawalls. And I remember seeing it, and I'm like, oh man, I really like these guys. I definitely want to work with them, So I made a connection with her, and it wasn't a couple of years later until I made other connections with, like, I would just literally email, or just message these different people, or when they came down, because sometimes people will vacation in Jamaica, and like if you just and like through other people, and you kind of get in contact with them. And because of that, I got some other situations that got me other festivals in different parts of the world, which then in turn made me meet back with the same people from Seawalls, and they're like, oh yeah, you met this person from that. And then I literally did my mural at the time geared towards looking like something they would want for them to then be like, oh, we're having this in December, come to December. And then I went there in December, met some other people. Oh, I have this thing in Memphis, come to Memphis. Oh, cool. I love
Exactly.
And you just kind of bounce off of things like that.
Exactly.
And it's and sometimes just simple situations of just when you have to think about, I guess, when you're in the field, you're in a place where other people are interested in things you're interested in. Like it's a lot easier. It's not like you're going into and even then there's advantages to that, but it's not like you're an artist and you're going into an engineering thing where you don't really know much about it. Like everyone or most people have similar interests or things that they like, so it's a very you have at least that in, and and even then you could go to an engineering conference and maybe someone liked your artwork one time and they're like, hey, can you help us design a car or something? Like things kind of spin that way. So I think it's just kind of when you meet people, whether it is online, it doesn't have to be social media, whether it is online, whether it's through email, whether it is other people directly, because I won't necessarily put too much pressure on anyone to meet people in a certain way, because I know lots of people operate in a different way. Like, lots of people have different situations that they're dealing with mentally or internally, that doesn't make it as easy for other people to meet in certain ways. But I think if you can find a kind of good balance of like what works for you, a person who maybe is a little bit more reserved or a little more introverted or a little bit more socially anxious, or whatever the situation you might be dealing with, and there's always still avenues for anyone to kind of get something, regardless of how you might engage with it. So yeah, there's way more avenues other than social media. Sometimes it's as simple as sending an email asking, hey, would you be interested in this, or could I do this, or pitching an idea to somebody, or if you asking someone else to be like, hey, could you pitch this for me, or finding someone like that for you, a person who is your pitcher. Like, I think there's a lot of different ways to do things, and I think that's a takeaway that I've realized over the years in terms of making opportunities for yourself, is that there's so many ways to make opportunities for yourself. There's so many different things you could try, and not to feel too afraid or pigeonholed by any particular
to be
thing.
open to conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The thing, just to kind of think about the clients kind of do some of the work for you. Clients will have similar clients looking at the stuff, and chances are they'll be able to give you a good referral if you do a good job the first time. And that's what I always tell people: do a good job the first time. That's the best marketing tool you could ever have. If you get an opportunity, capitalize on that possibly. Ask questions, make sure that the client's happy by the end of the day. Next thing too is I guess for me, like I try to my marketing is pretty passive, I would say, to be honest with you. But the main thing for me is that I make it as easy as possible for the client. I'm super easy to contact. My website, I try to make sure that it's it's ergonomic.
Yeah.
User friendly. It's user friendly. Yeah, I try to make sure that all the stuff is easy to find. I also push the things that I want to do to the forefront more so than the other things. Like, for example, like I like drawing things for people more than I like doing graphic design. So I'm going to put the graphic design first. You know what I mean? I'm also, highlighting the things, the projects that are, more favorable. I'm not putting everything online because everything I want to do again. I'm grateful that I have the ability to say that, 90% of the jobs I have right now are things that I actually want to do. Yeah. And that's because I've curated my online presence in a way that shows, like, hey, these are the things that you can come to me for. I'm not telling you not to come from it to the other things, but these things are cool, and these things I'm gonna
really important point that you mentioned, easy to contact. So for those of you who want people to reach out to you, make sure that whatever method it is that you want people to talk to you on, you can be contacted on it. So if you prefer email and you don't like picking up the phone, make sure your email is shown on your portfolio, on your website, wherever it needs to be. The last thing you want to hear is somebody was trying to contact you for work and I couldn't get to you. So if you have an avenue, if it's your phone and you don't mind talking to people, make sure you answer your phone. If it's your email, make sure you check your email.
Yeah, and don't make a situation where things that automate as many things as possible. That's the other thing too. Yeah. When it comes to marketing too, don't somebody shouldn't be asking for your email. Email should be somewhere. Any documents you put out, contact information needs to be on there.
Yep.
Social media, all of like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of them, get them the same name or close to the same name. Don't make
too difficult for people to find you.
Yeah. If I sell shirts, I can't be saying cakebakery.com. That don't make sense. And then You have to make sure that your name is, brand yourself, and make yourself easily accessible.
Wait, were you saying you can't call it cakebaker.com if you make shirts?
Well,
I mean,
I said, for him personally, being Joshua Solis.
Okay. Because
Then do so.
Yeah.
I wear a clothing line that's Cake Baker. I mean, that's what kind of looks. So.
That actually
Yeah.
It kind of
Johnny
does hang on
Cupcakes,
that.
remember Johnny Cupcakes? Like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Cupcakes on the t-shirts, feel free.
Yo,
I want if the
you
domain
know,
is available.
Josh made the Cake Baker shirts.
make the cake.
Huh?
Make the cake
Make Cake
baker.
Baker shirts right now.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely, right now.
Just,
Go on.
yeah, just
That's something
man,
interesting
can
that
I-
you brought up though, because
networking just happened. We just made
Yeah.
Cakebaker.net is available.
Oh,
.com
Hey.
is
We all work quick. That's the point. Yeah.
creating opportunities in the space itself.
Yeah.
This was actually a brainstorm. That's all this.
Here's on my
this,
board.
But that is something good to note though, because say for instance, in my case, like I'm not known as Nathaniel online, and I found that most people know me as Stratus on my social media pages. So as Joshua had mentioned, all of my social media tags are some form of Stratus at least, and that was the debate I made when I was making my website, whether I should do a nathanielhay.com versus Stratus or something. So I ended up just going with Stratus because that's more known. My name can be front and bold after the fact, so you link the two. But it is important that you stick to whatever people identify you as, so that they can find you a little bit easier. So currently, like right now, my Instagram used to be _stratus_, but now it's stratus.art, because that's actually my website, stratus.art. So if you type that in, it might pop up. So it just makes it easier for people. People are lazy. They don't want to have to type in too many things. So the easier you make it for them, the better.
Yeah.
And try to pick something that you don't mind being called in public.
And it's funny, it's not even so much that, I mean, people are lazy, but it's not even so much that people are lazy. I think it's just so much.
Yeah.
There's just so much. So I think you just need to make it easier for people to get access to what it is that they want to get access to. Because it's just, you'll go and like someone will see something and they deliberately see something and they'll be like, oh, that's cool. And then they just completely forget about it the second day, because the internet has completely melted our brains. But I said it right.
Can I chip in for my introverts?
Chip in.
Yeah. So I mean, word of mouth and networking is definitely important. I feel like most of the opportunities that I've gotten is through some form of word of mouth, or like putting up something and somebody see kind of thing. But one thing, some opportunities that I've been really interested in, I haven't gotten to go all the way down into them, but I feel like they're interesting opportunities, especially for artists, are like these solopreneur endeavors, right? So like I found out about KDP the other day, Kindle Direct Publishing. And basically there are a lot of people who are publishing books through Amazon. It's like print on demand, but for books. So like the books aren't like printed and you have a bunch of them sitting down waiting for somebody to buy them. Like anytime somebody orders the book, they print it.
They used to be called something else, like Create.
Yeah, there was another company on Amazon bought them. Yeah.
Publisher work with them, with the initial company, but then Amazon bought that company and kind of.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
But I feel like it's a huge opportunity, because if you go on YouTube right now and you look up Kindle Direct Publishing, there are a bunch of people making videos about how they're making money through Kindle Direct Publishing. And like say they're making a coloring book, for instance, and they're going to go on and they're going to say, oh yeah, just go on Canva and like there's some clip art and you just drag the clip art and whatever. These are people who actually doing it, and they're that not all of them are like making a ton of money, but like I feel like just the opportunity to differentiate yourself through quality on something like that as an artist who can create your own book and create like a cool theme and a story, and like I feel like that's an opportunity. Print on demand, as I said, like there's a website called Printful, and there's some others where you know you
Yeah.
can sell shirts. I think Taj had like so Taj, you sold stuff through Printful before, right?
Yeah, so yeah, I still sell
Yeah.
stuff with Printful even now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
I use Printful as well, actually.
There's
yeah,
also Amazon's merch.
Amazon
They have their
merch.
own
Yeah.
thing. Oh, I did not know.
Yeah, they
There's a
do.
really
Yeah.
there's a huge amount of like print on demand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
More-
and
And some of them specialize more, so you might have some that specialize more specific. Like I think Printful is very wide, but you have some that special, like with books, like you can say, or with
yeah, Gumroad is another one.
Gumroad.
If you want to sell like digital products, books, and you can sell video through there. Like if you make a short film and you think you can market it, you could put it up there and sell it for some money, and find a audience through there as well.
Like even like that's like texture packs and like brushes and stuff.
Texture packs and stuff. There's this
Gotten a lot of
on the
stuff.
same future. There's this on the same future YouTube channel. There's this guy who he has a thing. I think it's called Retro Supply Co. Look up Retro Supply Co. Like CO, the future, and you'll see like this really cool interview with this guy who, like, I think his story was, his girlfriend was pregnant, 9 months until this baby's coming, and he's like, oh shoot, I don't have like the money to do this thing, and I need to find a way to make something happen in a short amount of time. And he's like in the arts, and he's like, yo, I'm gonna sell textures, like for people, like when people make, you do something in Photoshop and you want it to look grungy or vintage or whatever. And like he goes and finds like public domain images, or he scans stuff and he like just digitizes it and packages it in like cool packages and sells it. And he like just made a ton of money and he's like, this is his full-time job now, because like he just started. Yeah, he was just selling like these texture packs and brushes and stuff like that. Like I always love stories like that. There's this other guy actually from Jamaica. He created this website with Bubble. The website's called Tiny Acquisitions. It's a Jamaican guy.
Yeah. The no code guy.
The no code guy. So Bubble is a website that allows you to create like apps and stuff without code. So it's like a drag and drop interface. There's probably a little learning curve, but it's like Webflow and like other. Yeah. So he created a site. I think his story is like he made like some small tools in Bubble, but then he found that it was difficult to, like, he wanted a small acquisition, like he wanted to sell it, like get out of it and just sell it to somebody. And he found that like it was difficult to find a place where he could do that. So he made a website to do that, and it became Tiny Acquisitions, and it's like a legit thing. I think is probably one of his like main sources of income. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's just, so I always, there's what's it called? Product Hunt. Product Hunt is a good place to look and see like creators like making things like applications or like websites, or like there are people who make, like, they have a cool idea for a mailing list, whereas like they just create an article every month, and maybe it's something of value. Like there's this one person, if I remember, and their whole thing is they tell the story of how companies got their first 100 sales or something like that. And they're just like first whatever amount of sales. But like that's the whole the whole mailing list is based behind just telling those stories. So they just research and write that, and a bunch of people subscribe, and then I'm sure they find some way to monetize it. You know what I mean? And I was actually I heard about this guy. I didn't get to finish it, but apparently he was a farmer. and he traded like stocks in like companies that deal with like agriculture, and then he created some mailing list, and he's like making like millions of dollars off this mailing list where he talks about agriculture, I guess, or something. Like, I just feel like, yeah, I just like stories like that because I feel like there's so much opportunity. There's this guy I saw, also this YouTube video I saw about I think it's titled like the internet will make 1 billion monopolies, and the idea is that everybody is unique and they can create some kind of unique offering, and if you can find a way to package it, then you can make a living on the internet, you know, with that. Yeah, and just, yeah, I feel like they're just, those are the things that kind of make me very interested. I love the whole word of mouth and the networking and everything, and that's really good, and it's important too, because as Joshua said, like, just staying on the internet all the time probably isn't good for any of us in the long run. So you need human interaction, but just the opportunities that are available on the internet is really amazing, and like there's just so many ways that you can, you know,
You guys mentioned a lot of good
do
on
something like
demand sites that people can check out.
Yeah.
It's a great
man.
The newsletter, as you mentioned, it reminded me actually of a podcast called like Side Hustle School, which does something similar.
Okay.
Right, it's just like a podcast episode every day
About people's side hustles.
About people's side hustles, just
Yeah,
you know how they get their, like, I think what first 100 or first 500 from their side hustles. It's interesting because
it's really interesting.
Yeah, because I feel like you could say that, you know, when you're the same, and this is a very business school answer, but the same muscle that we flex when we're making illustration and thinking about, you know, creating these pieces, like that same creativity muscle can be applied to business itself, like thinking about how you can turn this into something that's profitable for you, or how you can communicate this in such a way that it solves somebody else's problem. Just things like that. Like,
dude.
It opens to it, right?
Just before we started this, I was telling you about the dude, because we were talking about Duolingo, remember?
Yes.
Just before we started. So the person who founded Duolingo, I forget his name, I can look it up. So I guess he's a programmer. He created the captcha and recaptcha. So like, you know, when you sign up for a website and they ask you, are you a human being, and you must identify some. So he created that. Apparently, it was a verification tool, right? So he sold it as that. But another use of it was that it was helping to digitize like books in the Library of Congress. And he got like a big check. So like every time you looked at an image and you say a squiggly A and you say A, you were helping to digitize books in the Library of Congress. And he made like thing, and there was like this other guy who apparently he had this challenge that like he would just like, okay, think of a way that he can make like as much money as he can in like a short period of time. So he'd say, all right, give me like a weekend and see if I can make $1,000 in a weekend or whatever. But then he came up with this idea where I think it's called like the $1 Million website or something. And he created a website, and I think it's still up. And like, it was just made of like this grid of like pixels, and it's like each pixel is $1, and it's 1 million pixels, and you can buy an ad for your company or whatever and place it in like one in these pixels. So you can buy like one pixel, or you can buy like 100. And like he made $1 million in like 3 months.
Wow.
Because it's like he was just selling these ad spaces on this website, and was like be a part. I think his tagline was like, be a part of internet history or something like that. So it's like if you can like copyright and like come up with a cool idea. Pet rocks is another one
Yo,
that I love.
so stupid.
Dude, Pet Rocks is so it's stupid, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant because it's stupid. So it's like the brilliant thing about it is that they weren't selling the rocks. I mean, you get the rocks, but really they were selling the book because the book was like telling you how to take care of the pet rocks, and it was like written like in this humorous style, and it was like this funny novelty thing.
There's also one
You know
called
what I mean?
potato
It's,
parcel.
it's
Dude,
funny
like-
because it's kind of what, if you think about it, it's really what we do with almost any product.
yeah,
'Cause, I mean, like
Yeah.
tissue has use, right? Like just regular tissue roll has use, but then they created this entire Charmin logo and this bear and this mascot and this. So 'cause
Yeah.
anyone,
That's true.
like there's millions of different
yeah.
companies.
It's branding.
But
Yeah,
whatever you're buying the idea of this comfort and this,
Yep.
even though it's
Yeah,
definitely
man.
more functional than a rock, you can't really do much with that. But
The potato
And
parcel
the-
one is hilarious though. I'm just like, we're selling potatoes
Yeah,
to
man.
people with messages on them. Just like anything can be sold. So I mean,
Yeah.
if
$1 million homepage. Sorry, go on.
it's like if you want to create an opportunity, just come up with the idea. Try to sell it to people.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Like,
Okay, so we're going to move into the next set of questions. Trying to wrap up soon because we've been quite a bit over time actually. So you guys had mentioned doing work that you enjoy versus doing that, picking the type of work that you would like to do. So I would like to hear what your personal goal as an artist is, or as a creative, because Glenn's here as well and does programming as well. So I'm going to lump that in with the question. So what's your personal goals in your professions?
So sorry.
small goals.
But for me, the strategy, the my end goal is to be a fine artist.
Yeah.
Just do that. I enjoy making, the limitless potential, as in making work, making things unencumbered or with no not necessarily having any real world function. There's a level of delusion that you get to enjoy as a fine artist, But yeah, so my strategy kind of was, all right, I've kind of found this avenue for earning that is pretty practical and more or less foolproof, not completely foolproof. But offering the service to people, creative problem solving of sorts. It's kind of what I do for a living. So it's how I kind of describe it. And so once I lock that in, Solar Sync and all the other business endeavors that I do plan to move into, one of which I'm trying to jump into soon. Want to make sure that all that's square. Make sure if I can earn off of that properly. We're there now, so I'm trying to stabilize it a little bit more so that I can just make art and enjoy making art.
So establish the moneymaker so that you can do what you like to do.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
still be financially stable.
And still be financially stable. Yeah.
Mhm.
Tess. The rest of you.
that's-
Well,
Oh, sorry. Go on.
I can go.
Yeah, man. Go on. Go on.
All right. So mine again. I might be overthinking most of these. Apologies, but for me, great and truthfully, what I've found is if I'm not making, if I'm not creating, that kind of affects my mental a little bit. So the end goal really has been to figure out a way in which I can just do creative projects, follow that inborn drive to make things in perpetuity, right? So to basically get to a point where it is feasible for me to just explore my whims and just continue making into the future. That's like my end goal. Everything is kind of tailored towards that, and then being able to empower other people to follow that path if they should wish to.
I like that. I can agree that a lot of artists do want to just draw. If money never existed and we didn't need it, then I'm pretty sure all of us would probably still be doing what we're doing right now. So that's a pretty fair answer.
Yeah, man. My answer has probably changed a lot over the years, but I think it's ultimately the same as Joshua and Glenn said, like just creating, a base that can sustain you, and then using that to just make stuff, like be able to make stuff, like fund creative passions and stuff. Like there are other ideas that I've had, and I've like thrown myself into them and just kind of hit walls in, various ways, like whether I just run out of money or just vibes broke or something happen and you just, enter like a bigger depression, or like you just take on a job or something that you can't manage and that just absorb like half a year or something like that. Like, things like that happen. But yeah, like